Bills Mafia on tonight's special Friday night edition of the Air Raid Hour postgame show. We are diving deep into all things Bills Dolphins. We've got the latest injury updates, major takeaways, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is a breakdown you won't want to miss. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in to the Air Raid Hour presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Dave, outside of the really unfortunate Terrell Bernard injury, which is obviously Bills related, and the unfortunate Tua injury, which is Dolphins related, what a stress-free game this was on Thursday Night Football for us Bills fans.
Well, it started out, this is now 2 games in a row that the Bills have been able to get the ball to start the second half. And I don't know what it is, but whenever the Bills are kicking off to start games, I always feel a little bit better because I always have in the back of my mind that there's that little bit of a safety net that we're going to have the ball coming out of the second half. First 2 games to start this season, that's been the case. And look, the Bills went out and were able to put points on the board first after kicking off, which is always the ideal scenario. And then, the Dolphins do come back and tie the game. But after it was 7-7, from that point on, the Bills really ultimately controlled the game. And yeah, it was stress-free. The Dolphins made some interesting decisions. We'll talk about that. But yeah, to be going into the half up 2 touchdowns, knowing that you're going to get the ball as well to start the second half, it was as stress-free of a Bills game as we've had probably in some time, I would say.
Yeah, when your team has the lead going into halftime, a significant lead, and you're getting the ball back too on top of that, man, that is always a great feeling. As always, we're going to start with some news and some injury updates. 2 big injuries in this game. Obviously, one Bills related, Terrell Bernard. The other, the unfortunate Tua injury, more Dolphins related. Tua, thoughts are with him, man. Bills Mafia doing their thing, donating to his charity. A lot of Buffalo Bills have spoken up since that, just wishing him nothing but well. He's such a great guy. I know Josh Allen, Ryan Fitzpatrick had some really nice words for him on the post-game show. Hope the next time the Bills play the Dolphins that Tua is once again under center and he gets everything right. Terrell Bernard, pec injury, left in the first quarter. Kyle Brandt dropping the news of his prognosis, which is a little unusual for Kyle Brandt. It's reported as a sprain, not a tear. He's going to miss about a month. The Bills undecided whether or not they're going to put him on injury reserve. Dodged kind of a bullet there.
Yeah, and you see the Kyle Brandt post today and you wonder, like, okay, like he's a pretty prominent figure in media, not necessarily for reporting, but like you kind of like figure if Kyle Brandt's saying something, then it's probably true. And then you get McDermott essentially confirming that fact as well later on in the day, where he pretty much said, like, look, we don't know, we haven't considered IR yet, that's something that we might look at. It kind of all leads to this sort of maybe like month-long or so plus or minus timeline for Terrell Bernard, but really did dodge a bullet there. And look, at the end of the day, like the Bills, it's week 2 and they've already faced a litany of injuries to key personnel. So at this point, we're just hoping for the best when it comes to these injury news. And so the way these things were, and I was in a text with you last night and saying, like, there's really not a lot of in-betweens on these pec injuries, right? It's usually either or really bad or it's like precautionary. This one seems to be on the lesser side, which is good. I was worried it would be kind of like the Daquan Jones injury from a year ago, which kept him out pretty much the entire season till the very end.
I thought he was done. I thought he was done when we got the news. I thought his season was over.
Yeah. So the fact that it's not, and it looks like, maybe he'll be back let's say sometime in late October, hopefully. That was definitely welcome news. And it certainly sounds like too that they didn't put Taron Johnson on IR before the game, which also leads me to believe that maybe he will be back in a couple weeks as well. So who knows, maybe by mid to late October, outside of Matt Milano, the Bills hopefully will be looking a little bit more full strength on the defense.
Yeah, and the Buffalo Bills got 3 extra days to rest up. And once again, they have to get another reserve ready to fill some big shoes. In this case, it's going to be Balon Spectre, who Sean McDermott says, listen, this is going to be his job to fill while Terrell Bernard is out. Kudos to Spectre. Outside that one early gaffe when he first got into the game on the goal line, kind of screwed up his assignment, left Cam Lewis hanging out to dry on an island on that 8-chan touchdown. He played really well. People were hard on him because of the injuries. I know when we did our 53-man cutdown show, I left him on my 53-man roster. A lot of people in the comment section were just done with him because of the injuries. But the Buffalo Bills showed why they were patient with Balon Spectre. They really like him when healthy, and he went out there and proved why they liked him when he is healthy. I saw a lot of information or a lot of tweets today about making a trade. Devin White isn't starting in Philadelphia. Shaq Thompson, Carolina looks like they're going to be bad again. I'm team no trade. I want your thoughts on this. Show your guys you trust them. They've stepped up so far. Let them continue to step up.
Yeah, let them continue to step up. I mean, the Bills clearly like what they have in Balon Spectre, and also we've liked what we've seen from him when he's been on the field. Now, the key for Balon Spectre now is going to be to stay on the field. That first play, I mean, I'm sure his head was spinning a little bit, but like he really settled in. And even Kirk Herbstreit on the broadcast was talking about like what they had asked him to do when he was at Clemson, and mentioned his speed, and it was just going to be a lot more about the mental aspect of the game for him, which I actually think Kirk Herbstreit nailed it with that analysis on Spectre. And you could tell as well that Spectre and Dorian Williams have a bit of chemistry on the field together. Those guys practicing on the same units throughout training camp. Obviously, Bernard and Milano, the top two guys, and then Spectre and Williams being the second unit through. So those guys got a lot of reps together. So it was nice. You could kind of see that on the field, especially on the run fits. Like they were playing really well against the run. The big question mark for them going forward, this was a good big first test, is those two together in pass coverage. For one night at least, they were able to manage and did a good job. But athletically, you can't ask for much more from what you would want to mold with at those two spots than what you have with Spectre and Williams. So now it's just going to be about the execution, I think, and the mentals for those two guys together.
And hey, if Balon Spectre doesn't work out, we've seen how well undrafted Buffalo Bulls rookie free agents have looked on that defense. So maybe just add a third, maybe. That would be pretty crazy. But some reinforcements maybe are on the way with this extended rest. Maybe we see Dwayne Smoot get his first action against the Jaguars on Monday Night Football.
Revenge game.
Revenge game, right? You got to get healthy, got to get that toe healthy, got to get out there for the revenge game. And then one injury that we were tracking and we talked about in the pregame show, snap count versus Miami might give us an indication of where he is at. Curtis Samuel now gets 13 days to rest. He was once again at a 27% snap share on offense. He is probably more hurt than the Buffalo Bills are letting on. They're letting him play, but they're also clearly resting him and that turf toe injury that he is nursing.
Yeah, and this one's interesting because honestly, the throw that Josh Allen made to Curtis Samuel in the end zone on that one attempt,
he made that play in training camp.
Yeah, and that was a good throw. It was a good play by by Brooks on that one, but like he was there, and I think that part of me thinks it's that. Part of me thinks it's also the Bills have come out and they've run the ball with James Cook nearly 20 times in both of these games, and obviously Ray Davis got his run in this one. So part of me thinks like, is some of this to do with the fact that they want Mac Hollins, they want Keon Coleman on the field for run blocking. Obviously, Shakir has pretty much turned into their go-to receiver at this point. I don't think there's any disputing that through 2 games. Shakir is the go-to receiver on this, but I don't know. Maybe some of this is to do with the elements of the run blocking game. Why put Curtis Samuel out there just to? He's not their best run blocker. He was obviously in on that 4th down play as part of that orbit motion that the Bills did with James Cook. So he was in on some important plays, but he hasn't necessarily made the impact with the ball in his hands yet. So we'll see if this extra rest does anything for him. Again, the Bills haven't had him on the injury report these first 2 weeks because he just hasn't been on there. And also, it's going to be an interesting season, I think, just as we see it play out with like Shakir being the go-to guy. It's still not a high volume per player offense right now. And I don't know if we're so accustomed to seeing such a high target share to an alpha like we did with Diggs for the years that we're just maybe not used to just the slice of the pie being sliced so thinly now between each player that you know, it's something that we're going to see week to week. Through 2 weeks we haven't seen it. I don't know. I guess we'll see if it's really about injuries when it comes time to play Jacksonville.
All right. This show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza, with 4 convenient locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's Pizza has been serving Buffalo's best pizza since 1980. Whether you're a local or across the country, you can enjoy their delicious pizza delivered fresh to your door. Visit picassospizza.net to place your order today. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right. As we do on every post game, Dave, let's start with our one big thing. I know I put in the show notes 2 things because I know there's really 2 ways to go. There's one big thing I think on offense that we all want to talk about, and one big thing on defense that we all want to talk about. So you can go first and pick whichever one you want, and I will pivot from there because I put both into the show notes to be prepared. But what is the one big thing that you want to take away from this football game?
I saw your show notes. I just opened them up like right before the show started. I'm going. It's hard not to go with the defense, and it's more of I'm qualifying it too with the one big thing being not just the defense and sort of Sean McDermott's preparedness in this game, but the defense being able to now really for going over a year now. If you go back to last season with key injuries happening at the beginning of the year for key defensive personnel last year as well, Daquan Jones, Milano, Trey White. Now this year you got Milano, Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard. They have found a way to step up. And I do think that this sort of, I guess, evolution of Sean McDermott stepping back to sort of being more like, I'm the head coach. I'm going to let this responsibility fall more on Bobby Babich. I think that's worked well for the Bills through 2 games. And this defense has been able to answer the call through facing injuries, through facing 2 really good quarterbacks through 2 games. It's not the best 2 quarterbacks they're going to face all year, but top 10, I would say, quarterbacks in the league in Tua and Kyler. We don't have to get into that debate right now, but 2 really good quarterbacks they played, 2 good sets of skill position talent that they played against, and they've shown up when it's mattered most. Slow out of the gates against Arizona, but really since the second half of the Arizona game and this entire Miami game, even through all the injuries, this defense has stepped up and they've made the plays when they've needed to make them. And also the guys who have stepped up, Spectre last night, Ingram last night, Douglas making plays in the run game, Benford hanging with Tyreek, being smart about what he does in coverage, and then the defensive line just absolutely showing up, and Von Miller looking like he's got some of his old self back. That has to be the storyline of this game for me, is the defense holding this Miami Dolphins potent offense. I know Tua was out at the end of the 3rd quarter, but to hold this team for while Tua was in still to only 10 points is pretty impressive. And the job that they've done the last couple of years on Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, the Bills have been the most successful team defending Tyreek Hill in the NFL. So you got to give them credit as well for that.
36 minutes time of possession from the Miami Dolphins and only 10 points. Pretty impressive. The Buffalo Bills defensive line, they reset the line of scrimmage, absolutely manhandled them up front all evening long. And then really Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. I mean, what absolute dogs and those 2 are. I mean, unbelievable on the boundary. We got some comments here from the comment section. Walter S. says, as much as this was a masterclass defensively, I don't know how much I'm taking away from this game, given our history in general against the Finns offense. Normally, I think I might agree, but at this point, no Hayden Poyer, who have always been a part of that, taking the Dolphins away and a big part of the Buffalo Bills being able to stymie the Miami Dolphins. You got no Matt Milano. right? You've known that for about a month, but still, it's difficult to prepare for life without Matt Milano. You've got no Taron Johnson. You've had a week to prepare, but still, life without Taron Johnson is difficult. And then two series into the game, you lose Terrell Bernard in game. This defense, which is just so dependent on pre-snap communication, just absolutely dismantled Mike McDaniel, Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, and that vaunted Miami offense literally with their front seven or their front four, their boundary corners, and a bunch of new guys and backups. That's pretty darn impressive if you ask me. So I would give them a little bit maybe more credit than usual. Renaissance Man comes in and says, the biggest thing I took away is they finally built a team that doesn't require Josh to do everything all the time. Now, when he puts the cape on, it's a luxury rather than being a necessity. And that was sort of the offensive point that I had noted for my one big thing, because first, let's take a moment to just appreciate Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. They are absolutely dominant and have been dominant through 2 weeks. The interior of this offensive line is pretty darn good too. The Cromer effect is real. And the second thing is, for years on this show, since the Buccaneers went on that Super Bowl run with Tom Brady, I've always been talking about how I wish the Buffalo Bills offense was more multiple. And it seems like the Buffalo Bills finally have this offense that can do just about anything imaginable offensively. They can beat you in every facet of the game. They have the personnel to beat you out of 10. They have the personnel to beat you out of 11, 12, 21, you name it. Week to week, drive to drive, game to game, they have the personnel to throw something different at you. And this offense, everyone wanted to support Josh Allen with these big names, but really it's these selfless dudes who can shapeshift and these big nasty dudes up front that really seem like maybe they're going to get the best out of Josh Allen.
Yeah, I agree. And Sophia here with the super chat smash for the best Bills coverage. We appreciate that. This is our third show in 5 days. If people are getting sick of us. So we were on Monday, obviously the pregame last night and tonight. So we'll be off on Sunday and Monday upcoming here. But I appreciate that. On the offensive topic, right? It was maybe a blessing in disguise as well that the game plan was maybe slightly adjusted because of Josh's hand injury. Obviously, you want him to be 100% healthy, but you could obviously tell that there was an effort, a message, an agreement, a decision, whatever was leading up to this game, that he wasn't really going to take off and run as much, and there really weren't going to be any designed running plays for him. Obviously, there was the one sliding play he did with the by the way, the creativity of the trash talking. I could see why this guy was voted number one NFL trash talking. Going back to this one against the Dolphins, and then the looking at the name of the back of the, masterclass level of trash talking. But his hand being hurt, right, and him not having the running for him being part of the game plan, or making a conscious effort that wasn't going to be something they were going to put him in harm's way to do. They went back to the ground game like they did in the Cardinals game, where James Cook had the 19 carries. At the end of this one, he only had 11 carries, but he was super efficient with them for 78 yards. And then they gave the ball to Ray Davis at the end of the game. So they were still showing that they could do multiple things on offense. And again, under 20 passing attempts for Josh Allen, pretty wild when you think about that against in a Miami game, that's the case. But the Bills did everything they needed to do in this game, and on offense, they showed that they can continue to run the ball even when Miami expected it. They still did that. So a lot of credit goes to the offensive line. James Cook and Ray Davis, I thought, both showed really good vision in this game. And then obviously Ty Johnson making his mark in his snaps as well, especially on that third down play down near the goal line, beating Jalen Ramsey. So very nice to see that the Bills could do it. And by the way, Keon Coleman didn't even have a catch in this game. So
I don't even think he had a target.
He had one, the one
Oh,
that
did he?
the one that he knocked down that was
Okay.
like near the end, where it kind of like maybe could have been intercepted.
Yeah.
That was, he had one target.
And it's interesting, right? Because we've been talking for, all off season now, right? The direction NFL defenses are going is that cloud coverage. The Buffalo Bills are the same way. And a lot of NFL teams are starting to pivot, and the Bills are one of the the leaders in this, pivoting to more underneath stuff, death by 1,000 paper cuts, making sure to have a run game that you can lean on when teams want to just drop two safeties back and into that cloud coverage and take the explosives away. It's going to be really interesting next week, sort of just thinking ahead a little bit to seeing if the Jaguars see what the Buffalo Bills have done the first 2 weeks and try to take the short stuff away, try to take the run game away, and how the Buffalo Bills respond and maybe try to take some more shots down the field. Maybe have Curtis Samuel back, hopefully have, Marquez Scantling catching the ball. It'll be really interesting to see how the Jacksonville Jaguars pivot, because that's a defense that has traditionally, for some whatever reason, no matter who the coach is, given Josh Allen some issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very interesting comment here from Walter, and he says, "I'm not comfortable using a team like Miami that's regularly questioned for their inability to perform offensively against good teams as a measuring stick. With that said, this is encouraging." I will say, right? I mean, yes, the Bills have had Tua's number to the extent that you can, but you have to remember too, even in that early season game last year, I mean, the Dolphins they scored a decent number of points on this Bills defense. The Bills obviously slowed them down enough, and their offense was phenomenal in that game. And then, yes, the Week 18 game last year. I get where you're coming from, Walter, because the Dolphins have shown that inability, but the Bills also have to continuously show that they're able to stop that team, and a team that, look, I know Achan came in hobbled, but he did not look worse for the wear. As we said in the pregame, if he was going to be active on a short week, I had made the comment that I thought he was probably going to be close to 100%. He looked pretty good. And then the fact that Hill and Waddle were like out of the game with 6 minutes left to go. I mean, that's just such a embarrassing, I think, moment for you if you're a Dolphins fan or the Dolphins team, to see those guys just on the sideline. And even Herbstreit was calling them out a little bit, saying like they're not even up cheering their team on. But I think part of this goes back to what Herbstreit said as well, and that's with the culture and the moxie and the mentality of the team. There's a different mentality from the Bills than there are from the Dolphins, even though the Dolphins are a very good team. It's just, I don't know if it's Mike McDaniel's shtick or whatever it may be, but there's I feel like a more of a sense of urgency with the Bills, a sense of swagger, attitude, physicality that I just don't think the Dolphins have and have shown that they haven't had in big games in recent memory. And for that's another advantage for the Bills. So yeah, I think there's more to it than that.
Taking a look at some advanced statistics from this game. Every week we track complimentary football. Three main things that we like to track: time of possession, average starting field position, and turnovers. The Bills once again won 2 of the 3 categories here in this complimentary football tracker. They lost time of possession pretty handedly, 36-19 to 23-41, but that did not seem to matter because of the other 2 categories. The Miami Dolphins' average starting field position in this game was the 25-yard line. Dave, do you have any guess through the Tua injury? I stopped tracking after the Tua injury, by the way, so it's not the full game. Stop tracking after the Tua injury. Finn's 25-yard line before the Tua injury. Buffalo Bills, before the Tua injury, any guess as to where their starting average field position was?
Wow, well, they had interception, turnover on downs. I guess the pick six, they didn't really have a possession.
That's 99. That's 99 yards. That counts as 99 yards in the tracker.
Does it really? So they had to be. I mean, it's close either to like the 50 or even on Miami's side of the field.
It was the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
So their average starting field position was the 50-yard line through the Tua injury. In the first half, their average starting field position was the 43-yard line, and they started 3 times with the ball over midfield in the first half. Pretty good way to get out to a nice big lead and then get the ball back after halftime. Turnovers, technically, it's 3 for the Miami Dolphins, but really, I'm saying 4 because that Tua sack, that gave the Buffalo Bills the ball past the 50-yard line is, in my opinion,
it's in the name
as well.
It says turnover on downs in the name. Like, how is it not a turnover?
So the Buffalo Bills are now 2-0 when winning the complimentary football differential. Looking at toxic differential, Miami actually beat us in both 10 and 15 plus yard runs and passes 10 plus yard runs. This is, again, I stopped counting after the Tua injury. 10 plus yard runs. The Finns had 5 compared to the Bills 2. 15-yard passes, plus yard passes. The Dolphins had 4 compared to the Bills 3. But those turnovers, again, counted 4, which evens us back out at 0 in the toxic differential tracker. And since the Buffalo Bills returned one of those turnovers for a touchdown, I gave the Bills the edge here again, once again, winning the toxic differential battle. So they are now 2-0 on the season. A little bit of cheating there when winning the toxic differential battle. But I mean, this game, in my opinion, those explosives that Miami had were canceled out by the lack of explosives around them. And on top of that, just the lack of execution and the turnovers. They could not get that ball anywhere near the goal line.
Yeah, and I will say this is a game where the time of possession one probably doesn't really tell the story, right? Because you have the Bills scoring on a defensive touchdown, which there's really no time of possession there, right? Them starting on Miami side of the field a couple different times, shorter field, you're not going to have the ball as long. And then Miami, for whatever reason, like inexplicably taking like 6 minutes at the end of the first half to try to like milk clock, I guess, to not let the Bills double dip, apparently, but just taking all that time and then end up only kicking the field goal at the end. And then obviously, I mean, Achan had a good game, right? He was good on the ground. He was good at the Dolphins were getting the ball to Achan, and they were moving the chains with him, keeping possession, and then at the very end, obviously, kind of running the clock out with them as well. So not a surprise that the Dolphins led in time of possession if you kind of really break it down and see where the Bills had the ball, the defensive touchdown, and that type of thing. And then, so that's one that really doesn't tell the full story in this game. So, yeah, I think even though the Dolphins technically won that one from a data tracking standpoint, I think the time of possession in this game mattered less maybe than it has in prior games.
Taking a look at the stock up, stock down, we will start with stock up because it was such a awesome game to watch. And really, there probably aren't going to be very many stock downs. When you're looking at this game, what are some of your biggest positive takeaways?
Well, positive takeaway, right, I think is, offensive line play was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just say both lines, right? Ed Oliver getting into the backfield, Daquan Jones in the backfield. I mean, the trenches were controlled in this game by the Bills. So, we're going to go back and forth here with our different positives. So I'm going to start with that. Both lines were phenomenal. I made a comment in the Discord chat during the game day chat. I was like, man, the offensive line is dominating tonight. And then someone was like, the defensive line is dominating too. I'm like, yes, they have been. Like, it's been both sides, both lines dominated. Loved watching Ed Oliver work last night. Von Miller, his pressure stats were phenomenal last night. I think it was 2.1 or 2.4 seconds to the quarterback. Fastest he's been in some years. And then how can you not, like what you saw from Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver on the middle there as well. So the lines, I'll start with that as my stock up.
Yeah, Jessica Tense comes in and says defensive depth. Sweet Spike comes in or says Balon Spectre stock up. Stock up for Bishop says Spin was garbage time, but he looked good. I'll tell you what, man, the depth of this football team is being tested, and the depth of this football team is stepping up. Even something as small as like AJ Epinesa, because we expected AJ Epinesa to make an impact as an edge rusher this year. But with Dwayne Smoot out, he's the one who's been kicking into defensive tackle on some of these passing downs. It was his stunt that got the pressure in Tua's face that led to the Jamarcus Ingram pick 6. You've got Dorian Williams. It's not the Bernard level progress, but his progress is notable. Kudos to Balon Spectre for stepping in and filling the shoes of Terrell Bernard, Cam Lewis for stepping in and filling the shoes of Taron Johnson, and Jamarcus Ingram making plays when pressed into that dime backer duty. Post game, one of my favorite quotes from Ingram was like, hey, they believed in me. For 3 years, they've let me develop. They believed in me. They put me on this football field. So I got to believe in myself. His teammates' reaction when he had that pick 6, both offensively and defensively, the number of guys who just swarmed him and just wanted to celebrate with him and be in that moment with him. I'm not going to lie. When I first saw it on television, I thought it was Christian Benford, because of 47, the 46. And when I realized it was Jamarcus Ingram being a UB grad, like got a little teary eyed, not going to lie. Like that was just such an awesome moment. If you're a UB graduate, if you've supported UB football over the years, like I know myself and people like Mike Bunt, formerly here at Cover One, now back with Trainwreck, have over these years, like just what an awesome moment for the dozens of us that have supported UB football over the years. So yeah, the depth of this defense stepping up was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not talk about Ingram and Spectre and Williams? Really, Ingram and Spectre stood out at depth wise. These are valuable reps, right? And like the fact that Chris Schenke, one of the biggest Jamarcus Ingram fans there is out there, this makes things really interesting for a guy like Kaiir Elam, right? Because it's like this unit now, like between Rasul Douglas and Benford and Elam and Ingram, like legitimately make the case that this is the best top to bottom cornerback group that the Bills have had under McDermott. Like I don't think
it's in the league.
I mean,
time will tell. Time will tell, but
yeah. So let me say my next stock up. I don't know if it's possible to go more stock up than the stock up he was from last week, but Khalil Shakir stock up. I mentioned it kind of briefly earlier when we were talking about the one big thing, and we started talking about offense a little bit, but Shakir has become sort of through 2 weeks, right? And going back to the end of last year, the consistently available wide receiver that's getting open for Josh Allen in sitting down in these zones, making those tough catches, holding on to that ball when he got hit in the helmet from Jordan Poyer. I know the Bills would have gotten a first down anyway, but to hold on to that one and then get the extra 15 on top of it. He made some tough catches and showed some toughness as well on a team where, we're kind of looking around and maybe guys are looking around thinking like, hey, I'm not the man, or I'm not the go-to. We don't really have an alpha. So like I feel like he's kind of taking that mantle to be like, hey, you can throw it to me. I'll make the tough catch for you. You're going to be super efficient when you throw the ball to me because I'm going to make sure I catch it. And I'll say even more after what we saw from last week, Khalil Shakir's stock is up.
He's clearly like there's no dude in this offense, I don't think, but he's clearly like Josh Allen's dude. Like whenever Josh Allen, I think, is feeling flustered, that's the direction he's going to go look to throw the football. His blend of just being able to find the soft spot in zones and doing those like things that slot receivers do with his contact balance, his yard after the catch. Like the second he catches that ball, he turns into a running back. Just everything about his game is awesome. I don't know if he'll ever have the volume to really be up there with some of the upper echelon receivers in the National Football League, but talent wise, I think he might be there talent wise. Like he might be a guy who, if he maybe was in an offense that could funnel the ball to him more than this offense, he really could, make a name for himself. Not that he isn't already.
I mean, when you reminded me last night about the Robert Woods comparison, like I just couldn't stop thinking about that, right? Robert Woods, fantastic receiver in the NFL for a really long time, always made the catch, always got open, always seemed to do the very similar things that Khalil Shakir is doing right now. Is he an alpha number one receiver type like Stephon Diggs was? No, Robert Woods wasn't that guy either, but that type of player, we saw it with the Bills. We saw Robert Woods with the Rams do it, is very valuable in the NFL. So hats off to Shakir.
Yeah. And you saw this offense. They had an emphasis on getting the ball to Kincaid early. Then he took that like knee to the helmet and he left the field for a little bit. And then he came back, got the ball a couple of more times.
He didn't play a lot of snaps though.
Yeah. 42% of the snaps for Dalton Kincaid, but a nice little bounce back for him. And he'll get more involved as the weeks progress. But Coleman, 91% of the wide receiver snaps again, just kind of surprising to me that he is the one who is leading the snap share for these receivers. Matt Collins is number 2 at 71%. Shakir at 69%. Samuel at 27%. We talked about him at the top of the show. Maybe not 100% healthy right now with that turf toe. MVS comes in at 9%. And then the rest of the data is probably a little bit skewed because this game did turn into a blowout. Cook 40%. Johnson 16%. Davis 31%. Kincaid 42%. Knox 53%. But yeah, the Buffalo Bills, they're true to their word. This is a selfless offense. They're playing selfless football. That was their mantra after the game. And it's becoming pretty clear they're trying to send a message to someone who's no longer in the Buffalo Bills locker room.
Yeah, I want to ask you this question, though. Maybe I'll ask the comment section as well. Does it worry you at all a little bit that maybe that approach is going to lend itself to maybe guys shying away from wanting the football or shying away from wanting spotlight because there's this everybody eats mentality? I'm not saying that's how I feel, by the way. I'm just asking the question, could this come back to hurt the Bills at times, maybe in some pressure moments where maybe it is Shakir, but like the fact that they maybe don't have that guy that really is demanding the ball in pressure cooker moments, that it's going to hurt them at times? Like I'm asking the question. I'm curious to hear what the comment section thinks.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because when you think about it, when the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions game on Thanksgiving, right? That comes to mind. Everybody knew where that ball was going. That ball was going to Stephon Diggs. And Stephon Diggs knew that ball was coming to him. And Stephon Diggs is one of those guys who has that mindset. He's ready to go and he's ready to make that play. I think if there's one receiver on the football team who is going to take up that mantle, I think pretty clearly right now it's going to be Khalil Shakir.
Yep.
Music Blogger 87 comes in and says Allen is that guy. And when we get to the negative section, like Allen not maybe having full use of his legs because of that hand injury today might have affected the Buffalo Bills a little bit on third down. That's a conversation that we can have on one of the few maybe stock downs. Inferno 314 comes in and says it could hurt a team with a worse QB, but Allen's always going to have his scramble preference and is talented enough to be trusted to hit who he needs to and wants to hit. Chris Janke comes in and says, it's hard to know that answer when you're asking about multiple players, but I tend to lean towards it not being a problem. That's a great question, right? Because there might be a game this year where we're asking Keon Coleman to be that dude and we're throwing the ball up to Keon Coleman in that moment. Is Keon Coleman going to deliver? And if he doesn't, how many weeks do we have to wait before we get that answer again? Before we get to test that hypothesis again, because he might not be the guy who gets it in the next clutch situation. So super interesting. And a couple other comments here in the comment section if you want to get to them.
Well, it's interesting, right? Kincaid is the guy when it comes down to it. Shakir. I mean, and Curtis Samuel, I thought maybe could throw his hat in the ring there, but we just haven't seen a lot of him. Walter says it worries me because at the end of the day, when we're in the playoffs, I feel like we're going to need someone to beat a guy. We don't want another Texas game where nobody was really, and that's kind of where I'm getting at with this, right? Like you don't want guys to shrink in the moment because they feel like someone else is going to pick up the slack and then no one picks up the slack, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. I see that sort of in the workplace at times as well, where everyone thinks someone else is going to do something and then no one does it. So, and I like that comment from Ralph, like everybody is going to be ready and not let the team down. That maybe that's the better way to think about it, is like everyone wants to be that guy rather than no one wants to be that guy. And so even in limited action, maybe, or limited opportunities, people like really want to take that up. So we'll see. I mean, it's 2 games in, maybe some looks like Shakir now, maybe it's Shakir and Kincaid. We'll see. But this is kind of what we thought maybe was going to happen anyway, because of the everybody eats sort of, it's like almost become its own hashtag now, this everybody eats thing. So yeah, we'll see.
Going back to the defense a little bit, my favorite statistic of the game, Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 24 yards. Jaylen Waddle, 4 catches, 41 yards. Jamarcus Ingram, 2 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. So that was the great statistic there that Todd Clausen pulled out on X. And then the secondary, I just want to go back to the secondary a little bit because we sort of talked about already how Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Von Miller, like AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones, those guys, they reset the line. And the defensive line really did dominate, and they made life a lot easier for those guys in the secondary. But in that secondary, man, Rasul Douglas and Christopher Benford, they do not get the national credit they deserve. I think Douglas especially, because Douglas was just an absolute dog in this game. Benford too. One of the best duos in the league. And through 2 weeks, Taylor Rapp, Damar Hamlin, they're doing their 111th, and this secondary looks really solid.
They are. And I mean, Aaron Quinn was making some good points last night. Like Achane was ripping off some pretty good runs, but like they were limiting the damage to the best they could, right? And yes, maybe he ripped off a 10, 11 yard run, but like some of those could have easily been 20, 25 yard runs. And so limiting the damage, not allowing the big play. The Bills did that all night last night. Yes, Achan's numbers look good on a yards per touch basis, but like there wasn't that monster huge play that the Bills defense gave up, like we saw the Dolphins defense give up on that James Cook 49-yard touchdown run, for example, right? So they were making them earn it. They were making them go down the field, like we said, like have to put 10, 12 consecutive good plays together, and the Dolphins just couldn't do that when push came to shove.
And that seems to be the philosophy of this team, right? Like, we'll give you the underneath stuff. We'll even give you some stuff in the run game. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to walk down the field, as you just mentioned, in 10 to 12 plays. There's a chance in those 10 to 10 plays, 10 to 12 plays, you'll make a screw up, right? We'll turn the ball over, get the ball back. Not to mention, with that cloud coverage the Buffalo Bills have been utilizing, taking the top away, taking those deep explosives away. Sure, you can walk down into field goal range probably pretty easily if you string those 10, 12 plays together. But guess what? When the goal line then becomes a natural barrier, the back of the end zone becomes a natural barrier, and we no longer have to be in cloud coverage, good luck getting the ball into the end zone on us, is probably what the Buffalo Bills are thinking with their defensive strategy. And over the last couple of years now, Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich, Leslie Frazier, these guys have been sort of finding new ways to utilize this strategy of bend but don't break to their advantage. And it has really paid off for the Buffalo Bills. Any other positives that you want to talk about before we get into maybe the 1-2 negatives?
Look, don't kill me for this, but Sam Martin's been pretty good through 2 games. Like he's been punting the ball well. It's been 2 games. He's due for a shank. He's going to shank one against Jacksonville, I'm sure. But through 2 games, Sam Martin has looked pretty good when called upon. Now, thankfully, the Bills haven't had to punt a ton. But through 2 games, Sam Martin, I won't go as far to say stock up, but stock it's simmering. It's simmering right now.
Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, they're playing some absolute dominant football right now. The offensive line is dominating. I feel like we have a trio of running backs that are scary. Each can make plays in their own different ways. I think the Buffalo Bills have been waiting to have an offensive line that can dominate up front like that, and running backs that can complement each other like that. And Josh Allen, when blitzed through 2 games, NFL Next Gen stats, he's 8 for 10 for 92 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 144.6 passer rating, and 0 sacks. Do not blitz Josh Allen. It's not going to work out well for you if you are a defense. Something we've been saying on this show, and something I saw echoed by a number of people on social media last night. Josh Allen is closer to Patrick Mahomes than the next quarterback is to Josh Allen. It is pretty abundantly clear through 2 weeks just how special this dude is. And a lot of national pundits who wanted to use Josh Allen as a punching bag this year are going to look pretty stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like go back to, I like to think of, whenever I think of like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and kind of the other quarterbacks being compared to them, I like to go back to prior decades or prior eras, and I feel like, during the 2000s with Brady and Manning, right? It was like preference. Who did you like better? And it was kind of everybody else. Now you had some great quarterbacks at that time as well. You had guys like Drew Brees, right? And in that era, who, he at times was talked about with those 2 guys, but really for the most part, that those 2000s eras defined by Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, right? And I feel like that's kind of what you're getting now with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Like this 2020s, early, like late 2010s, 2020s is kind of being defined right now by Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And there have been a lot of good guys as well around those guys, Dak, Joe Burrow, guys like that. But they're just not quite to the level of those 2. So I am with you when it comes to that comparison.
All right, on to the stock down. I got 2 things in my notes, and one of them we've already talked about. I actually got 3 things, but one of them we already talked about. So if you want to watch this, you can go back to the top of the show. Terrell Bernard, his injury, how the Buffalo Bills can sort of move forward with him being out about a month. We talked about at the top of the show. The Tyler Bass miss late. I mean, I don't know. Is that big of a deal? Was it tipped? I haven't had a chance to go back and watch this game a second time.
I mean, the Dolphins players were acting like it was tipped. You had some people going back, watch the replay, said, no, it wasn't tipped. Some people going back said it was. I have not gone back and studied it closely yet, but man, I hope it was. I'll say, because granted, that kick didn't really mean anything, but that's like when you're golfing and like you it finished poorly on the last hole, right? Like maybe you had a good day, or maybe even if you had an okay day, but then you just totally blow up on the last hole. You're thinking about that the next time you go out on the course, like on the first
Yeah.
tee box. Like you don't want any creeping of doubt to come into Tyler Bass's head. So, for his sake, I'll say it was tipped. I have no idea. Total, just a total, statement on my part. I don't know if it's true or not, but let's hope it was tipped.
The only other thing I have on the negative list is the Buffalo Bills looked a little uncomfortable on third downs early in the game because Josh Allen didn't look like he was remotely interested in doing what Josh Allen normally does on those like third and short situations and being a threat to tuck and run with that hand injury. I think it's going to take some getting used to. It's going to take some getting some work and some reps, but hey, maybe it's a good thing for the Buffalo Bills over the next couple of weeks while Josh Allen recovers with this hand injury. They're going to have to find maybe some new ways to win on third down.
Yeah, part of that X factor, like you said, has been taken away a little bit. And so, look, running the ball, Josh Allen standing in the pocket, right? Firing that ball into Shakir on one of those key third downs. Obviously, the scramble out to his right and hitting, Ty Johnson down. That type of stuff's still going to be available for him. Like those off script throws where he kind of most times goes to his right. That's still going to be available for him. And like, I think he will run the further remove we get from each game we go along. I think you'll see him run a bit more. But I'd like to see it more like some of those where he's running out to the right and he uses that pump fake to just freeze guys, and maybe he just kind of runs out and runs out of bounds, right? That's fine. Those types of things. So it's good. Like I said, a blessing in disguise. Like I said earlier, he only had the one carry in this game. The Bills really milked it on the ground with Cook and Davis. But you're right. I think third downs, that's something that the Bills will continue to need to focus on. They were only 3 for 9 in week 1 against against the Cardinals, and they were 3 for 9 again in this game. So 33% so far this year, both games 3 for 9. And last year they led the league at 47-48%. So they're a little bit off on the third down game. But I think they can get that. I think they can get that situated.
All right. As we wind things down here this evening, a great comment, I think a good one to sort of bring the show to a close with is Charles G saying, hey, one more positive one we didn't have in our show notes. This is a good one. Bills much more disciplined with penalties than they were in week 1, which is a very, very important thing. The Buffalo Bills definitely played a much more disciplined game of football. That'll just about do it for us this evening, folks. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday night. I know there's some Arizona and Kansas and Kansas State football that you could have been watching, but you chose to be here with the Air Raid Hour, so we appreciate that. As always, smash that like button. That always helps us out with the algorithm and word of mouth. If you could just hit that little share button, text this to friends, family, people you think would enjoy the Air Raid Hour, that would be greatly appreciated. Some clerical things next week. Obviously, we're not going to have a show on Monday night. We're going to relax a little bit after doing three shows in 4 days here. No show on Monday night. This is our Monday night show. We will be back pregame show Sunday night in preparation for Monday Night Football. And then things get a little weird because Monday is our normal spot. I'm going to do, if I get permission from the bosses, a post-game show. So I'll go live after Greg and Aaron, if I'm allowed. I gotta make sure I get the permission first. And then Dave will be joining Joe DeRosa on the Under Review podcast on Tuesday night.
Yep.
So you'll get both doses of us at different times, and you'll get all the coverage of Bills Jaguars that you need. But nice little rest that we have coming up here.
Yeah, good little rest. I think that the late show with Craig Ferguson that you're going to do on Monday. I love that show, by the way. That was a low key underrated late night talk show. That was a good show. So for those degenerates and those West Coasters, and maybe even Dan Brown who's out in Hawaii who want that late night fix, you'll be available for them. And then I'll be joining Joe Tuesday. It'll be nice to kind of just be in the guest seat for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Joe is always so cordial and welcoming to us on his show. So really appreciate Joe letting us kind of crash his Tuesday night a little bit. So yeah, good times ahead.
All right. As always, in the comment section, you brought it tonight. You bring it every night. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!